What's up, Womack Nowstalgia? Dave here with a review of Warfare, the new action war film co-directed by Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza from A24. Alex Garland back with another film after last year's Civil War. Of course, Alex Garland, celebrated, polarizing filmmaker, someone I'm a big fan of. Civil War was in my top 5 last year. I always find his work very compelling at minimum and often incredibly engaging and of course very visually competent as well. And then of course Warfare is also coming from director Ray Mendoza. Ray Mendoza was a former US Navy SEAL during the Iraq War, and the film Warfare is about his experiences during the Battle of Ramadi in 2006. And if you think about war films and just kind of the recent entries we've gotten, this definitely stands out as something that's very modern set with also a focus on, kind of realism and, clinging to historical accuracy and things. If I think of like the big war films that have broken out in the last few years, and Alice Garland's Civil War, a little off to the side because, of course, that's a fictional movie, but I think of something like All Quiet on the Western Front, 1917 and 2019. Those, of course, are about World War One and World War Two. Warfare is a lot different than those movies, right? All Quiet on the Western Front, 1917. Those are grand epics. They span kind of great distances and have massive set pieces and are very great movies. But Warfare, I think, takes a really specific tactical approach to the experiences of a squad of Navy SEALs during urban warfare. And this film, it's not the first one to really focus on kind of the horrors of war, but also kind of like the banality of it and just the disorienting nature of what it's like to be in the midst of a firefight. That's not new with war movies that maybe have a bit more of a higher minded, bend to their storytelling. But the way Warfare approaches its storytelling is really a one of one in terms of the recent memory of war movies. Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza's Warfare is a visceral, grounded, in your face war movie centered around a squad in the midst of urban warfare during the Iraq War. This film eschews the epic set pieces and superheroic moments of other war movies and largely grounds us to one singular building and one city block. What we focus on is the chaos that keeping everything together during warfare entails. How grounded and tactile everything about this movie, the communication, the progression of basically everything you're watching. The tension is so high. It also helps that the film is littered with a who's who of rising young actors. Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton, Will Poulter, many others. It's an impressive cast. And despite the movie being about a unpopular and controversial war, this film is hardly glorifying anything that occurs. The movie's biggest success is just how well it communicates how overwhelming it is to be in such a chaotic situation. The sound design, particularly in IMAX, when an IED explodes, was really effective. The movie really handles its tension well because obviously you're watching the movie, you're watching this squad doing some surveillance, doing some recon during, the ending stages of the Battle of Ramadi and the Iraq War, which was obviously a really protracted and casualty ridden conflict. And you're watching guys, they commandeer a home from civilians. They have some, local scouts, working under them. And then now they're just surveilling um, locals looking for insurgents, right? I think from the very beginning, you have a sense of uneasiness, right? Again, these guys literally stole a family's home, and unsurprisingly, it's destroyed by the end of the movie. And you see how this squad has the family stay in one room and on the first floor and just tells them not to move and do anything. You see how they treat the local guides, the Iraqi guides, that they seemingly don't give them complete respect, even though they're relying on their translation capabilities. There's a key sequence where the guides get sent out the door first with kind of obvious ramifications. I don't think the movie is shying away from that, kind of ideological point of view when it comes to American imperialism and its shortcomings. And I think if you focus on that angle of Iraq war bad, this movie glorifies that, this movie sucks and has no merit. I just think it's a really narrow way to approach a film like this. Because again, I think the craft behind this movie and the storytelling is really effective and well done. By the end of this movie, you've watched multiple soldiers get grievously injured. You watch untold number of Iraqi insurgents get killed. We don't really have a clear gauge of the casualties on that side of things. The movie doesn't make a point of showing like kills in that regard. You see the emotional tax that all these soldiers are going through in this situation, and when I see that, I don't think, oh, I should feel bad for the American soldiers fighting an unjust war. That's not how I think. I think of like how bad is it that these guys got sent into this horrible situation for an unjust war. I mean, that's kind of the angle I take of it, right? Like they ruined this family's life. They killed all these people in their own country, and they got wrecked in the process, right? But because the movie's so grounded on this squad and how they are fighting to take care of each other and the protocol of being a soldier and like the again how grounded it is and it's attention to realism in terms of again Ray Mendoza's own experience as a veteran, bringing that into how the movie is choreographing everything. I think it really works, and it is pretty cool to spend time with this pretty loaded cast. I mean, the first squad you're with, the lead officer, who whatever rank he is Will Poulter. The sniper is Cosmo Jarvis. Joseph Quinn is with that squad. DeFaro Woon-A-Tai from Reservation Dogs is here. And then this other squad we meet up with later, we get to see Finn Bennett and I think a really epic and gallant looking Charles Melton. Kit Connor's in the first squad. No Centineo's in the movie. I didn't even recognize him. Michael Gandolfini as well. It's a really, I think, excellent cast, but none of them gets like the flashy moment, right? This is not Mark Wahlberg in Lone Survivor. This is not Taylor Kitsch, I believe, sacrificing himself on the mountain in Lone Survivor, right? There's nothing like that in this movie. And what instead it's just kind of about the banality of the chaos and the going back and forth on the radio in terms of just trying to get their injured guys evacuated, right? And just for a movie that takes place really in one small area, and it speaks to I think how efficient the budget is, used in this movie, where it's taking place really on one block in one house primarily, and they do so much great storytelling with showing you like drone feeds and computer screens to show you the surrounding blocks, even though those don't actually exist in the context of the movie set. And of course, once the IED does blow off, you're waiting, with bated breath. You know something bad's about to happen at the movie. The sound was overwhelming in IMAX, with the power of that sound, and I think the way it's designed, right, the way it like circles around you, the haptic design of the sound, I thought was really impressive. But then the movie spends all this time about the what if it's like to be shell shocked, what it's like to try and keep someone grievously injured alive while you're still shell shocked and had your own bell rung, right? I think the minute to minute of the movie is where it's so successful. You think about Garland as a filmmaker, a Civil War movie I thought was really impressive in terms of its commentary on journalism and certain gray areas and ethical questions and things like that. Some people were looking for that movie to be a more clear, like red versus blue type conflict, and that's not what that movie was interested at all in the slightest, and that's why I liked it so much. People have often pointed to Alex Garland as being someone who doesn't really have the means or desire, I guess, to take a stance on something he's presenting in a movie, right? I think like Warfare again. Like I don't think Warfare is running away from any of the, problematic aspects of what you're watching. I think they're so very clear. You watch them send the Iraqi scouts out to their death. Watch them get exploded by an IED from their own countrymen, right? It's not presenting that as something that's good, like a good outcome, right? You see the devastation that family went through, right? Do we truly get their perspective? No. Do we get the perspective of the Iraqis at all? We do not. And I think that's a fair note. But for this movie, the fact that it's so grounded and focused on this one squad, and this one specific place, and this one specific place and time, I think it's effective. This is a movie again pretty modestly created. You see some of the blue screen backdrop in the like credit sequence where they show you some behind the scenes footage, and I think it impresses with how transportive the production went, even though again it only so much of it was really created. This movie I think has chance to be successful. Of course, Civil War is the highest grossing film in A24's history. Now Warfare doesn't have nearly as much blockbuster appeal, and the marketing is obviously way lower, so this is not going to be a massive movie, but I do think it's going to be pretty successful because, again, the movie was pretty modestly made, and I do think the word of mouth on this film is going to be strong. The critical reception is already quite strong. So, Ray Mendoza, I'm curious what this means for him. Obviously, his POV as a veteran, desire to become a filmmaker makes a lot of sense for the creation of this film. What's next for him? I'd like to see that. Obviously, hard to really weigh the responsibilities when you have co-directors, right? Especially when someone's so much more veteran than the other one in the case of Garland and Mendoza. So wait and see, I guess, in that regard. And of course, we know Alex Garland will be back in a writing capacity with the 28 years later return soon in the subsequent movies in that, reboot continuation of the franchise. That's very exciting. But yeah, let me know what you think about A24's Warfare. What'd you like most about it? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.